The wind cut like glass through the Montana pines, whispering through the forest with a sharpness that belonged to dead things. Snow had fallen relentlessly for days, blanketing the land in a white stillness so deep it swallowed even the sound of Elijah's boots as he moved along the ridge. The thermometer clipped to his pack read -15 degrees Celsius. But he barely looked. Out here, cold wasn't a number. It was a state of being. It filled your lungs, stung your skin, and reminded you you were alive. Or that you wished you weren't. Elijah adjusted the strap on his camera bag. The weight of it familiar. Grounding. He hadn't spoken to another human in almost a month. After Mira died, he'd walked away from everything: his marriage, his studio, even himself. The forest didn't ask questions. It just existed. That was enough. He was checking one of the remote trail cams he'd rigged near a game path, motion-triggered. Weather sealed. The cold made batteries unreliable, so he changed them often. Kneeling, he brushed snow off the cam and popped it open, fingers working fast. Then he heard it. A sound, barely there, a whimper, soft, broken, like breath snagging on frost. Elijah froze. He knew the forest sounds. The crack of branches under elk hooves. The eerie cry of a lynx. The silence of snowfall. But this was different. This was pain. Or fear. Or both. He turned slowly, scanning the trees, holding his breath. The sound came again, closer now. Shivering on the edge of the wind. Instinct took over. He moved toward it, quiet and low, heart quickening. 30 meters downhill, half buried beneath a fallen tree and a drift of snow. He saw them, a large German shepherd, her coat matted with ice and dirt, lay on her side, breathing shallow. Blood darkened the snow near her back leg, and one ear was torn. But she wasn't moving for herself. Her body curved protectively around a nest of tiny shapes, 6 puppies. No older than a few days. Squirming weakly against her belly. Their whimpers too faint to carry far. One wasn't moving at all. Elijah's breath caught. Something in him shifted. Something he thought had died. The mother lifted her head as he approached, baring her teeth with a low growl. But it was weak. Her eyes were glassy with pain and exhaustion, yet still full of defiance. She wouldn't let go, not yet, not until her pups were safe. Elijah crouched slowly, lowering his camera bag, hands open, voice low. "Easy, girl," he murmured. "I'm not here to hurt you." He reached out gently, brushing snow from the smallest pup. It was still breathing, barely, in that frozen silence, surrounded by snow and suffering and the quiet will to survive. Something called Elijah back from the edge. And for the first time in years, he answered. The wind howled through the trees like a warning, rattling the branches and lifting flurries of snow that bit at Elijah's face. But the cold didn't touch him anymore. His focus was locked on the scene before him. The mother dog's breathing was ragged. Blood, thick and half frozen, crusted on her muzzle and shoulder. Her hind leg was twisted unnaturally, and every rise of her chest came with a faint whine. Yet her head remained angled toward her pups. Eyes barely open but watching, always watching, as if sheer will might keep them alive. The puppies had just opened their eyes, still cloudy with newness. Still unsure of the world. They huddled close together, shivering violently. One of them let out a thin, high-pitched cry that broke off mid-whimper. Their tiny bodies were cold to the touch. And Elijah recognized the signs of hypothermia setting in. They wouldn't last much longer. He moved closer, slow and steady. The mother dog let out a low growl, barely audible over the wind. Not a threat, a warning. Her body trembled with the effort. It wasn't hatred in her eyes, it was fear. Of what he might do. Of what he might take. He stopped, held her gaze, and lowered himself to her level. "I'm not going to hurt them," he said softly. "Or you." She didn't growl again, just watched. Elijah shrugged off his heavy coat and spread it out on the snow. The cold hit him like a slap. But he ignored it, one by one, with careful hands. He gathered the pups into the coat, wrapping them tight in the thick fabric. They were so small, so quiet, he could feel their weak, fluttering hearts against his palms. When he reached for the mother, she didn't flinch. She looked at him, really looked at him, and in that shared moment of frozen desperation, something passed between them. Not trust exactly, but surrender. She let him lift her. Her body was heavier than he expected. All muscle and matted fur. But limp with exhaustion. She didn't fight, didn't snarl. She just breathed, slow and shallow, as if choosing to believe, for one last time, that someone might help. Elijah carried her and the bundled coat back to his truck, navigating the icy slope with the precision of a man who'd hiked it 1,000 times. The engine groaned but started, and he cranked the heat as high as it would go. He laid the puppies across the seat, then nestled the mother next to them, wrapping a spare blanket around her battered frame. She let out a soft sound, not quite a sigh, not quite a whine, and rested her head near her pups. 15 minutes later, they pulled up to the cabin. The place had once been his daughter's sanctuary. Wooden toys still sat frozen on the porch. Her drawings, yellowed and curling at the corners, were pinned above the fireplace. He hadn't changed anything, couldn't, until now. He opened the door. Warm air met them like a breath from another life. And together, they stepped inside. That night, the cabin glowed not just with heat, but with something Elijah hadn't felt in years: purpose. He moved with quiet urgency, layering blankets by the fire, placing warm towels fresh from the radiator beside the puppies. He dripped glucose-mixed water gently into their mouths with a syringe, watching for even the slightest response. Their breathing was faint but steadying. The mother, Sora, he'd decided to call her, lay nearby. Her body curved protectively even in sleep. Sora, Sky. The name had come to him without thinking, rising like breath. There was something about her presence, her fight, that reminded him of open skies and things beyond understanding. Her wound was worse than it had looked in the snow. Elijah had cleaned the gash on her leg and dressed it with the supplies he kept for emergencies. She whimpered once as he tightened the wrap, but didn't bite, didn't move, just stared at him, exhausted but alert, as he gently cleaned the ice from her ears with a damp, warm cloth. Something caught his eye, just behind the left ear, beneath a crusted patch of fur. He leaned in. A tattoo. Faded. Numbers. Letters. Military style. Elijah stared. She wasn't just any dog. She was a service dog. Trained. Discarded. Left behind after a mission. Or deemed no longer useful. The thought burned through him. She'd served. Protected. Obeyed. Only to be left to die in the snow with her babies. It made something in his chest twist. Sharp and deep. He whispered, "You deserved better." The fire crackled, throwing soft light across the walls. Shadows danced where his daughter's drawings still clung to the beams. Animals. Always animals. Dogs. Mostly. Wolves. Foxes. Creatures with wide eyes and kind smiles. Mira had loved them all. She used to leave scraps for strays behind the cabin. Even though Elijah warned her not to. She said kindness shouldn't need permission. As the pups began to stir, weak but alive, Elijah felt it all rush back. The smell of her hair. The way she used to curl up in that exact spot by the fire. Reading aloud with a puppy curled in her lap. Her laugh. The unbearable silence when it stopped. He pressed his hands to his face. Breath catching. The tears came without warning. For years, he'd buried it, shut it away with the world. But here they were, 6 tiny lives that had no reason to survive except that their mother had fought through hell. And somehow, had found him. Sora stirred, lifting her head weakly to look at him. Her eyes were tired, but knowing, watching him, like she had out in the snow. Like she understood. Maybe she did. Elijah knelt beside her and rested his hand gently on her head. "You saved them," he said, voice cracking. "You saved me, too." Outside, the storm raged on. Inside, for the first time in a long time, there was warmth and life. A month later, the snow had begun to melt, retreating in patches from the earth like a secret being slowly revealed. The forest still held onto its winter hush, but the cabin pulsed with life. The puppies, 6 now healthy, bounding balls of fur, tumbled across the yard under the pale sun, chasing each other through mud and snow. Their yips and growls echoed off the pines, full of mischief and motion. Elijah sat on the porch with a coffee mug warming his hands, a faint smile pulling at the corners of his mouth as he watched them play. Sora lay beside him, her coat sleek again, leg healing with a slight limp. She didn't run like her pups, but she kept her eyes on him like a quiet guardian. She was calmer now, no longer flinching at sudden noises or guarding her food. Just present, whole. Elijah had taken her to the vet in town the week before, gotten her leg properly treated. Her papers started. Officially, she was his now, legally and emotionally. The vet had scanned the faded tattoo and passed the info on to a local registry. Word got around. At the general store, a retired soldier had stopped mid-step when he saw her. "That's Alpha 09, he'd whispered, voice cracking. "Jesus, I thought she was gone." He told the story right there, with tears in his eyes, how Alpha 09 had led search crews through a landslide 3 years earlier, finding 4 people buried alive in the wreckage. how she'd been injured and separated in the chaos. No one had seen her since. Someone took a photo. Someone else shared the story online. It spread fast. Messages poured in. Rescue organizations, veterans, people asking if she was available for adoption, if she could be honored, if she could be used again. Elijah read every message, every comment, then shut the laptop. That night, after the pups had fallen asleep in a heap by the fireplace, he sat beside Sora on the floor. The light was low. The room quiet except for the soft breaths of sleeping dogs and the faint creak of the cabin settling. He leaned in close, placed a hand gently on her shoulder. "You don't have to save anyone anymore," he whispered, his voice barely holding. "You already saved me." Sora looked up at him, eyes calm. She rested her head against his knee with a quiet sigh. And for the first time, she looked truly at peace. Elijah didn't need the world to know. He didn't need medals or interviews or ceremonies. He just needed this. A porch in the woods. 6 pups growing stronger by the day. A dog who had been lost and found again. A man learning, piece by piece, how to live. And above them, the sky, clear, open, endless. Life didn't return to the cabin with a bang. It crept in slowly, on padded paws. In small footsteps. In laughter that began as uncertain giggles and grew into something real. Sora stayed. So did the pups. At least for a while. A few were adopted by families in the village down the hill. But they visited often. The others roamed the woods around the cabin, never straying far from the porch where their mother liked to nap under the morning sun. The house that had once held only silence and ash now pulsed with warmth, noise, and motion. And Elijah. He changed too, not all at once, but with quiet steps. He reopened the broken door at the back of the cabin. He took down the blackout curtains from his daughter's old room. He began photographing again, not for galleries or money, but for memory, for joy, for the stillness in a dog's eyes, for the way light filters through frost-covered branches. Children from the village came often now, climbing the trail in little packs, bundled in scarves and big boots. They'd knock shyly at first, but Sora always greeted them like they belonged. They'd help Elijah feed the dogs, clean the bowls, brush tangled fur, and learn the quiet patience of animals. Some of them said they wanted to be vets. Some just came to feel the peace. They started calling him Grandpa of the Forest. The name stuck. Sora aged gently, her days spent lounging near the fire or watching birds from the windowsill. Her limp never fully left. But it never slowed her down either. There was a grace to her now. A calm that only comes after storms. She didn't need to fight anymore. And Elijah, he found himself talking to her more than anyone else. Not because she spoke back, but because she listened. She had that rare kind of presence that made silence feel like conversation. On the cabin door, carved carefully into the wood above the handle, were the words, "Where Sora came, life began again." Visitors always paused to read it. Some asked what it meant. Elijah never explained. Because some things aren't meant to be explained. Just felt. Hope, after all, doesn't always announce itself. It doesn't always come with clarity or open skies. Sometimes it arrives lost, bleeding, and broken, curled around something fragile and breathing. Sometimes it doesn't bark. It just watches, waits, believes. And sometimes, you don't need open eyes to see it. You just need to be willing to feel it when it comes.
Thank you for watching the video. If you enjoyed it, please comment 1. And if you didn't, just hit like. See you in the next videos.